Are the sects of old the same as the ones today? For example, the Khawarij of old, are they the Khawarij of today? No. They are worse today than the ones of old. As Shaykh al-Fawzan mentions, he said the Khawarij of old were truthful. If you ever caught them, they would say, yes, we did it. And this is our aqidah. Like Abdurrahman ibn Miljib, the one who killed Ali radiallahu anhu, he waited in hiding for Ali to come out of his house. When Ali radiallahu anhu came out of his house, that he sprung upon him and he struck him in his head with the sword and killed Ali. So then Kulthum, the daughter of Ali radiallahu anhu, she screamed out, "O enemy of Allah, you have killed the Amir al-Mu'mineen." He said, well, cry. He said, well, cry then. Then when they took him, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they took him and they fettered him. They chopped off his hands and his feet. He did not utter a word. He didn't utter a word. He did not scream. He did not cry. Then they gouged out his eyes with red hot pokers. Not a sound. All the time he was making the dhikr of Allah. So then they took his tongue and they were about to put a red hot coal upon his tongue, or a red hot poker upon his tongue. He said, no. Then he called out. They said, why now? He said, because I do not want to die except with the dhikr of Allah upon my tongue. He didn't deny what he did. Shaykh al-Fawzan mentions that at least they had sidq. They were truthful. As for the Khawarij of today, Imran bin Hattan, Bukhari narrates from him, Khariji. But Bukhari said he would never lie. He would never lie. As for the ones of today, when they get caught, they lie. And they deceive. They end up in court and what do they say? It wasn't us. We have never incited extremism. We have never incited terrorist activities. Who said that? Abu Qatada. You have never incited anybody. Abu Hamza likewise. Look what they wrote in Al-Ansar magazine. You can kill women and children in Algeria. But that's not inciting. When they stand up in court in front of the kuffar, first thing that comes out of their mouth is lies and lies. After swearing, because when you stand in a court of law in England, in criminal court, what do you have to do? You have to take an oath that you will swear by Allah that you will not lie. First thing that they do is lie. Kadhabin. And then when they are asked to be extradited, to where? To Jordan. What does he say, Abu Qatada? I want what? I want my case to be taken to the High Court. Who does he want to judge? High Court. And the Lords. Look, Arbab, the Lords, the House of Lords, he wants them to judge whether he should go to Jordan or not. Then what does he say about the Saudi rulers? What does he say about them? Kuffar. Why? Why do they answer me? I want you to be with me. So you see where they're coming from. Why are the Saudis? Why? Because they don't judge by the Sharia of Allah. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Whomsoever does not judge by Allah has revealed, they are the kafirun. So the Saudis are kuffar because they don't judge by the kitab and the sunnah. Even though the constitution of Saudi Arabia says that we judge by the book of Allah and the sunnah of Allah's messenger and the way of the Sahaba. Malik bin Abdul Aziz, he said this when he entered into Mecca in 1928. From that time till this time, the law has not changed. Malik Fahad bin Abdul Aziz, he said this, rahimahullah. Malik Abdullah of today, bin Abdul Aziz, he also says this, that we judge by the book and the sunnah. This is the constitution of Saudi Arabia. Abu Qatada, who says they are kuffar, Saudi Arabia, they are unbelievers, because he says they don't judge by the book and the sunnah, which is the same thing that Yusuf Estes says now. Same thing. He says there is no Muslim country in the world, and not even Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they don't allow women to drive cars. Majaneen. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? Hudatha al-asnan. Sufaha ul ahlam. Young in age, foolish in thought. Even though Yusuf Estes is an old man, but he's a foolish old man. Just because you see a man with a white beard, finding it difficult to walk, doesn't mean he's an alim. Right? Don't be deceived by the ubbad. Don't be deceived by the worshippers. Barakallahu feekum. So now he stands up in court, this Abu Qatada. He says, I want to judge by the High Court and the House of Lords. Can't get anywhere there. I want judgment by the European Court of Human Rights. La ilaha illallah. The last time I looked at the European Court of Human Rights, it didn't mention anything about the Quran and the Sunnah in there. Right? It doesn't mention nothing about returning judgment to the Book of Allah, nor the Sunnah of Allah's Messenger. And you know what? He won. Abu Qatada won. He was awarded, I think it was £4,000, because he said, my human rights have been violated. Human rights have been violated. He won £4,000 by the judgment of the Court of Human Rights in Europe. So by his standards and his own principles, he should really do what to himself? Make takfir upon himself. Really. I won't do it. Because we fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough to say that you, jahil, ignoramus, even though to be honest with you, calling him a jahil is an easy exit. Because Abu Qatada is not jahil. He knows what he's doing. He does it with his eyes wide open. Abu Qatada. He knows. He has knowledge with him. That's not a praise of him. That's a hujjah against him. Just like Al-Muhasibi, Al-Karabisi, they had knowledge. But that isn't in their favor, that's against them. Iblis was informed. But that's not in his favor, that's against him. So these people, look at Abu Hamza. How many years he was fighting to prevent extradition to the United States. He said, no, I want to be judged here. I don't want to go to America. Why? Because it's a different ball game in America. It's orange. In America, it's all orange. You're going to have to wear that orange clothing. And your hands are going to be in chains and your feet are going to be in chains. And you're not going to get what you get here over there. It's a different ball game in America. So now he doesn't want to go to America. So he stands up in court. No, me? Terrorist? Inciting terrorism? Telling people to do acts of terrorism? Me? No, not me. Kadhab, you swore by Allah in court that you would speak the truth, and you lied. And then they say that it is permissible to speak against the rulers. And they are the ones who quote the hadith. You know the hadith of Allah's Messenger? That the master of the shuhada Yawm al-Qiyamah is who? Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib. Prophet ﷺ said, the Sayyidul Shuhada, the master of all of the martyrs Yawm al-Qiyamah is Hamza. And then the one who stood in front of the tyrannical ruler and spoke a word of haqq for which he was killed. So now this is your chance. Stand in front of the House of Lords, the representatives of the House of Lords, the court, stand in front of them. Go to America and stand in front of them and speak the haqq, ya Aba Hamza. Why are you trying to hide? Why are you trying to fight for your life? You want everybody else to go and kill themselves in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and even in the streets of Britain? That you refuse to condemn terrorism in this country? Refuses. Like this Anjum Shaitan. This Anjum Shaitan, what does he say? He doesn't want to condemn it. He says, but me radicalized? I didn't radicalize them. All of a sudden now he says we have a contract of aman. Now he has a contract of security. But you want to carry empty coffins in the streets of England. For what? He says these empty coffins represent the dead in Afghanistan. You want to now talk about about not condemning terrorism activities in the West. This is those people. When it comes to standing up and speaking, they'd be all of a sudden, all of that shuja'ah, that courage that they speak with on Radio 5 Live and BBC and CNN. Because their names will not appear in any future Sira Alam al-Nubala. Their names will appear in the Encyclopedia Britannica or on CNN archives or BBC. Why? Because Ahlul Sunnah do not regard them to be Ahlul Sunnah. These are Khawarij, ya ikhwan. These are Khawarij. So they are worse today. Why? Because they are kadhabeen. And they kill women. And they kill children. Like the brother who told me, he said, I spoke to them 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. He said to him, if my wife and my children were walking in a high street in London and a bomb of the terrorists went off and my wife and children were to die, you would have no problem with that? He said, no. Casualty of war. Casualty of war. Go and put your wife and your daughter there then. Right? Casualties of war, what? Killing women and children are casualties of war in the streets of London. Why? Because they regard, because Hizb ut-Tahrir for decades have been saying that these lands are Darul Harb. In fact, the whole of the dunya is Darul Kufr and Darul Harb to them anyway. The Khawarij have always said that Britain is Darul Harb. They say this is a land of war. It's not Darul Aman. It's not Darul Islam. They don't consider it to be Darul Kufr even. They say why? Because hostilities have taken place. So therefore this land is Darul Harb, which is a land of war. In a land of war, you can kill. You say, okay, if it's a land of war, who's your Amir? Who's your Amir? Who are your scholars? And they say, we don't need an Amir. We don't need an Amir. We can carry out jihad like this. The brother said to him 2 weeks ago, he said to him, give me the conditions of jihad. Alright, you're talking about jihad. You even want to go to Syria, right, and go and do whatever you want to do out there. Right, so what are the conditions of jihad, this jihad that you keep talking about? He said, what do you mean conditions of jihad? He said, what do you think? What do I mean by the conditions? Why the acts in Islam, the ibadat, have shurut. The salah has shurut. From the shurut of the salah is wudu, tahara, istiqbalul qibla, facing the qibla. And not having any najasa upon your body. From the shurut, satrul awra, covering the awra. So jihad also has shurut. What's the shurut of jihad? He thought for a moment and he said, kill them wherever you see them. Do we need to continue this conversation? This is how they are, ya ikhwan. Who's pushing them from behind? Qa'adiyah. The Qa'adiyah are sitting behind them and encouraging them, inciting them, pushing them to do these acts. That's why Anjem Chowdhury can sit in a warm studio in the BBC several days later, or even the day later, and say what he says, and lie through his back teeth. And then the BBC, why? Because he likes high profile. Anywhere he goes, he wants the cameras there. So it is the same cameras that now have turned around and bitten him on the rear. Why? Because the actual killer in Woolwich is seen standing right behind Anjem Chowdhury in one of his demonstrations. Clear, almost like a high definition photograph. And then when they asked him, he said, yeah, actually he did attend my rallies. But that doesn't mean I've radicalized him. What do you do at your rallies except radicalize people and incite them to murder and killing? That's all he does, this Anjem Shaitan. That's all he does, ya ikhwan. I know I'd make the answer short, but anyway.